Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf, Menachos Ayin Tes. We are at the Mishnah on Ayin Chesamid Beis, around 7-8 lines from the bottom. As we learned yesterday, the Hakrava, the Shchita, the Zrika of the Karban Toida is what grants the bread, the accompanying bread, the bread that comes with the Toida, gives it its Kedusha. So the bread becomes Kaddish through the Shchita, etc. of the Karban Toida. And we also learned that if he did the Shchita Shaloi Lishma on the Karban Toida, thinking it's a different Karban or whatever, we have a special pasuk. Al Zevach Toidas Shlamav. There's any diversion there. It's not L'Shem Toida, there's no Kedusha activated on the bread. Now what happens if there are other types of deviations, in Machshava or otherwise, in the actual Karban Toida? What happens to the bread? So according to our Mishnah now, the rule will be pretty simple. If the problem, the mishap, predates the Shchita of the Toida, so let's say it was discovered to have been a treifa, which is a condition that it experienced all along, before the Shchita as well, so then it was a non-starter, the Shchita. Therefore there's no Kedusha on the bread. But if something happens during the Shchita or afterwards, the bread is still Kaddish. Says the Mishnah, Shachta chus l'zmana. He did the Shchita on the Toida thinking that he's going to eat it, in a week's time, which makes it pigel. Or that he's going to eat in the wrong location. In these cases, the mishap occurs during the Shchita, and therefore Kiddush HaLechem, the Lechem is Kaddish. So in the first case, the Lechem will likewise have a status of pigel, and in the second case, it's merely pasul. But Shachtav Nitzah Treifa. He discovered the Toida to be a treifa. Although he discovered it only after the Shchita, but it was there all along, and therefore Kaddish HaLechem, Lechem is not Kaddish, because that deficiency predates the Shchita. Shachtav Nitzah Balas Mum. Let's say after Shchita was discovered to be a Balas Mum, and the Gemara will tell us we're talking about a very slight blemish, not really visible, not noticeable, in which case the halacha is im olu lo yerdu, if it would be a carbon already on the mizbeach, you would leave it there, so it's not as severe as an ordinary deficiency, and therefore we have a machlekes. Rabbi Lezer Omer, koi kiddush, even in this case that it was a Baal Mum, it's still going to be mekadosh the bread. B'cham Omer like kiddush, no, because it was deficient all along. And finally, this is what we learned yesterday based on a pasuk. Shaloi Lishma, all agree, is a non-starter. Shachta v'shaloi Lishma, he did the Shchita on the Toida for the sake of a different carbon, so he thought it's a Oila or whatever. He did not have in mind the Oila. V'chein Eila Miluim, likewise in the case of the Miluim and the Midbar, where they brought the Ayil with the breads. These are examples of public carbonates that come along with breads. V'chein Shnei Kivsei Atzeres, likewise the two sheep on Shavuos that come along with the two breads, and all these Sheshach Shlo Lishma, was not Shlo Lishma. Lo Kiddush HaLechem, the bread is not Kaddish. Now Mani Masisin Mani, our Mishnah which establishes this as the formula, who's speaking here? Meir. That's his system. The sign is Zaklal. This is the rule. Kol shepisuloi koydem shchita, deficiency precedes the shchita, so then the shchita cannot really accomplish, cannot really activate kedusha on the bread. Loi kadosh halech. Pisul achar shchita, but if the psul occurred rather than before, it occurred during or after the shchita, such as chos lazmana, chos lamkaima, etc., then kiddush halechem, the lechem is kadosh. And here come some examples. Okay, shachta chos lazmana, chos lamkaima. So that's not before the shchita, that's during or after. Then we say kiddush halechem. Shachta v'nitzas treifa. What if it was discovered to be a treifa, which was really a condition present all along, so that predated the shchita. In this case, loi kadash halechem. There's no kiddush. What about a balas mum? So that's subject to machlekes. Shachta v'nitzas balas mum. Rabbi Anan Tesamad Aleph. Rabbi Lezer Omer kadash. The bread is kadash. Rabbi Shoyim Eloi Kadash, it's not Kadash. And we're going to see later, the reason why a Baal Mum would be treated differently. Why would Rabbi Lezer say it works? The Mum was there all along before the Shchita. We'll see. Who's speaking? Divrei Reb Meir. Pretty simple formula. Typically, the Shchita of the Toida is Mekadosh Lechem provided. It was a proper Shchita Lishma, but otherwise it depends. If the Psul occurs before the Shchita, so it's a non-starter, but otherwise it works. Amar B'Yudah. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees slightly. He says like this. There's no machlekes about Baal Mum. The Mum was there all along. Of course, it doesn't work. There's no machlekes between Oz and Yeshua. First of all, by treifa, of course it doesn't work. Okay, that's pretty simple because the treifa condition was present all along. The shechita never had its power to be mekadesh the bread. On the other side of the spectrum, we have pigul, v'achutz l'zmanei shekadosh. If it was machshava achutz l'zmanei, which makes pigul, that certainly, although the carbon is puzzle, in fact it's even worse than puzzle, it's pigul. If one eats it, it gets cursed. But after all, it will be considered an act of akrava. You know, there's a lashon in the Gemara. Rashi brings it the Gemara in Zvachim. It's meratza lepiguloi. It accomplishes, in a negative sense. It's a positive negative. It accomplishes something negative, but it is considered an act of akrava, considered an accomplishment. It makes pigul. Okay, it generates this new pigul entity, and certainly in this case, Rashi adds the fact that we know that im olu lo yerdu, right? Back in Zvachim, if carbon like this was placed on the mizbeach, it gets absorbed. It doesn't come down. So basically, chutz l'zmanei, there's no question. It's somewhat of an act of akrava, and chutz l'zmanei shekidesh, it's mekadesh the bread. Val Baal Mum sheloi kadesh. On the other hand, if it's a Baal Mum, and the Mum was present all along before the shechita, so it doesn't work. So what is the machlekes about? V'ama nechelko. What are they arguing about? Rabbi Lezer Mishua. Achus l'mkoimai. If you had a machshav achus l'mkoimai, what happens to the bread? Rabbi Lezer Omer, he says kadosh. The bread is kadosh, just like chutz l'zmanei. Rabbi Mishua Omer like kadosh. He says it doesn't work. And here comes a comprehensive presentation of positions. Rabbi Lezer will present his case. Rabbi Mishua will respond back and forth until we get a conclusion. So basically, according to Rabbi Lezer, although by chutz l'zmanei we say it works, but not chutz l'mkoimai. Sorry, according to Rabbi Lezer, just like by chutz l'zmanei, it works. The same as chutz l'mkoimai. He equates the two. Rabbi Shua does not equate those two. He's going to say, well, chutz l'zmanei is his own thing. Chutz l'mkoimai is different. Let's see. Rabbi Lezer. We find one example of psul chutz l'zmanei, where you agree that it's mekadesh the bread, and likewise b'chutz l'mkoimai is another version of pasul. Let's equate the two. Ma chutz l'zmanei kadash, av chutz l'mkoimai kadash. Just like there's kedusha by chutz l'zmanei, same with chutz l'mkoimai. Why would we differentiate? They're both psulim that were generated through machshava, through erroneous, improper, intentions. They occur during the shechita. If it works by chutz l'zmanei to be mekadesh the bread, the same with chutz l'mkoimai. Rabbi Shua, he says no. I'm going to opt to compare chutz l'mkoimai to Baal Mum. Rabbi Shua, hoyel v'chutz l'mkoimai pasul. Chutz l'mkoimai is an example of a carbon that failed, right? Baal Mum is also pasul. Let's equate the two. My Baal Mum, just like Baal Mum, you agree, all agree, like Kaddish, the bread does not become Kaddish. Af chutz l'mkoimai like Kaddish, the same with chutz l'mkoimai. Rabbi Lezer responds, again, Rabbi Lezer, why are you comparing those two? Ani the Mesiul chutz l'zmanei. Look, I chose to compare Mekayim to Zmanei, right? V'ata demisl Baal Mum, you're comparing them to Baal Mum. Let's make a fair analysis and see what's a more matching equation. Let's see who he's more comparable to, and we'll go with that one. Look, let's be intellectually honest. Look, if Mekayim is comparable to Zmanei, we'll connect those two. We'll learn them from chutz l'zmanei. If you're right, then you're right. If Mekayim is comparable to Baal Mum, fine, we'll connect them to Baal Mum, as you're saying, Okay, so Rabbi Lezer says, let me begin my presentation. So Rabbi Lezer Lodin, so he began to discuss and analyze these two options. And he says, look, I'm forced to say that Mekayim and Zmanei is a better equation. Why? Done. We will derive psul machshava, chutz l'mkoimai, which is a machshava deficiency. It happened through machshava, psul machshava from chutz l'zmanei, which likewise has the same It's the same thing, right? It's a psul machshava. Ve'ein don psul machshava psul aguf. Rather than attempting to compare chuslam kaima, which is a psul machshava, to balmum, and learn it from balmum, which is a psul aguf. It's a different type of right. So that's why I prefer connecting chuslam kaima to chuslam zmanei, just like a chuslam zmanei, which is pigul. We say that it generates kedusha on the lechem. Likewise, by chuslam kaima. No, Rishon responds. His Rishon, he began to present his case. Why he prefers comparing chuslam kaima to balmum. Don and psul she'ein by kares. We prefer comparing chuslam kaima, which is a psul that does not carry kares with it, to something of a similar nature. Psul she'ein by kares from balmum, which is likewise a psul without kares, as opposed to chuslam zmanei, which has kares with it. You can't prove from chuslam zmanei she'psul she'ein by kares. Furthermore, says Rabbi Shuvayit, remember, all agree that by Shaloi L'Shmai, there's no Kedusha. It's based on a pasuk, right? Void nidanenu Shaloi L'Shmai Shapsul Machshavei Mekaris. Why don't we compare Chuslam Kaimai to Shaloi L'Shmai, which is a deficiency that does not have the karis accompaniment, and all agree based on the pasuk Zevach Toida Shlamav, there's no Kedusha on the breads. The same with Chuslam Kaimai. Perhaps the case of chuslam zmanei, that's an exception. But we should learn from the halacha, from the pasuk of Shalei L'Shmai, that if there's a psul in the shchita through the machshava of the it doesn't really take off. Whether it's Shalei L'Shmai, chuslam kaimai, chuslam zmanei, it's an exception. We said before, it's been ratzili pigula, it's a positive, a negative. It's considered somewhat of an akrava, but otherwise, Shasar Belezer conceded. He was silent and he conceded that in fact the toilet that was shechted chuslam kaimai will not be mekadosh the bread. Okay, so before we continue, let's just summarize. We know that the shchita of the toilet is mekadosh the bread, provided it's a proper shchita. But what if it's a failed shchita? So we have two approaches. Meir says, very simple formula. Depends where, when it happened. If the psul arrived before the shchita, preceded the whole process, so then it's a non-starter. It can't do anything. So whether it's a treifa or a balmum, according to some shittas, we'll see soon what the machlekes there is, right? And we have a pasuk regarding Shalei L'Shmai as well. It doesn't work. But chuslam zmanei, chuslam kaimai, that occurred during the shchita. That will be sufficient to be mekadosh the bread. That's Reb Meir's approach. According to Rabbi Yehuda, by a balmum or a treifa, all agree these things came before the shchita, and the shchita never got a chance to do its work. No kedusha on the bread there. Shalei L'Shmai, we have a pasuk, it doesn't work. Chuslam zmanei, it's an exception. Certainly it does work. By chuslam kaimai, we have a machlekes. Shall we say it's like Shalei L'Shmai and does not accomplish, or like chuslam zmanei, like piglun, it does? Now let's go back for a second. Reb Meir. According to Reb Meir's first approach, when it comes to a psul like treifa, which certainly preceded the shchita cannot really do its work. But when it comes to balmum, we have machlekes. Reb Lezer says it still works. Reb Shua says it doesn't work. Now, why is the balmum different than treifa? They both were present before the shchita, which preempted the shchita, which disabled the shchita from doing its job. Reb Meir, ma'ishno shachtav nitzes treifa. Why would you say on the one hand that by shchita, which was discovered to be a treifa, it doesn't activate the kedusha on the breads? Why? Because it turns out that it was possible before the shchita. Well, the same thing with the balas mum. It was blemished before the shchita. How could the shchita do anything? Why is that different than the shchita that was discovered to be a balas mum? The level of psul comes shchita, that at least according to Reb Lezer, we don't treat it like a psul before shchita, and the shchita is mekadosh the breads. We're not speaking about a blatant mum, beduk and shabayim. We're speaking about some sort of barely noticeable, some sort of eye ailment, some cataract. But Rabbi Akiva, and this is going like Rabbi Akiva the Amr, who says that in this instance, when it's just a barely noticeable mum, Rashi said it's not nikar, it's not so blatant, it's not so pronounced. So in the halacha of Malul Yerdu, which we mentioned before, that it's a halacha that if you have a failed carbon that was happened to have been placed on the mizbeach im olu, once it's up, you don't take it down. A special halacha, it's discussed at length in the Perek HaMizbeach Mekadesh back in Zvachim. So this is another example. According to Rabbi Akiva, if it's just a slight mum like this, you would leave it on the Mizbeach. And Rashi adds, because we find, the Gemara there explains, because we find by birds, this type of slight blemish would not even, be an issue there. So it's considered a lighter issue, a lighter mum, and likewise by us. In terms of determining the value, the impact of the shchita on this slight mum, we say it's enough. It's sufficient to be mekadesh the breads. That's Rabbi Elazar's approach. Rabbi Yeshua, but Rabbi Elazar's opponent, Rabbi Yeshua, who says no, even in this case, it's a non-starter. Why? He says, look, I know about Rabbi Akiva, who says im alo lo yerdu, who considers this slightly blemished carbon as somewhat properly processed to the point that if it's on the mizbeach, it stays there. Fine. True, Rabbi Akiva says, in this case, if it's on the mizbeach, leave it there. That's with respect to its own status. Do you take it down? No, you don't take down the animal. But here we're talking about affecting others, activating the kedusha, the shechita of this deficient carbon should activate kedusha on, should have enough within himself to spread it around, to mekadesh the bread. That's going too far, and therefore he says it doesn't work. Itmar. Here comes a slightly different discussion, which of course links back to our discussion. This is a chatos, carbon chatos, sheshachta chutz zmana. So now we're going to shift gears to the halacha of im alo lo yerdu. So again, that's the idea that if a carbon was once placed on a mizbeach, it's sort of a magnet, it absorbs it, you don't take it down, even if there's some deficiency with the carbon. To what extent? Says the Gemara, let's say it's a chatos. Sheshachta chutz zmana. It was done pigul. Im also later, if it's on a mizbeach, you leave it there. But if it's chusam kaima, which in a way is a lower level deficiency, there's no karas there, right? So you had a mind to process the carbon in the wrong location. Now it's on the mizbeach. Rava Amar Teirid, bring him down. And this is in line with Rabbi Yeshua, right? Remember we had the second approach earlier, Rabbi Yehuda's approach to the whole sugya, that there is a big discussion regarding Shalei Bim Kaimai, contra Rabbi Elazar, which equated to Chutz L'Smanai, to Pigul. Rabbi Yeshua says no, Chutz L'Smanai doesn't have the same advantages as Pigul, which has the positive negative to it, right? It's an accomplished, somewhat of an accomplishment. Chutz L'Smanai is just a plain deficiency. So Rava likewise will follow that track and say Teirid. Achatash L'Lishma, Chutz L'Smanai, bring him down. He's not considered carbon material. Rabba Malay Teirid says no, don't bring him down. And the Gemara explains that these two opinions are in line with the previous discussion, with the previous opinions. Rava, who says bring him down, Rabbi Yeshua, who told us earlier that Chuslam Kaima is a non-starter. Likewise, over here, you bring him off the Mizbeach. Rabba, who says, no, keep it on the Mizbeach. Even by Chuslam Kaima, Rabbi Elazar, who says, well, Chuslam Kaima is equated to Chuslam Zmanoi, it's like, runs a similar track like Pigul, and therefore, it is considered somewhat processed, somewhat hukrav, and therefore you leave it on the Mizbeach. So this was initially. But ultimately, Rabba, who initially was of the opinion that leave it on the Mizbeach, he conceded to Rava that you remove the chatas from the Mizbeach. Why? Because just like Rabbi Elazar earlier conceded to Rabbi Yeshua, so likewise over here, he conceded to his opponent, and he wouldn't treat Chuslam Kaima and Chuslam Zmanoi, even if it's on the Mizbeach, he take it down. Now there was another different version of this discussion here. Of the conclusion. Avagav the Hadabei Rabbi Elazar, although in the earlier discussion, right, regarding whether the faulty shchita on the toida is mekadesh the breads, Rabbi Elazar ultimately agreed to be sure that chuslam kaimai, it's too deficient, it doesn't do anything to the bread. Avagav the hadam, even over there, Rabbi Elazar agreed to be sure, but over here it's different. And the reason is because you see over there, he agreed to Rabbi Yeshua that it doesn't work, right? That the chusam kaimai is treated. Right? Initially, he said chusam kaimai works, right? But ultimately, he agreed to Rabbi Yeshua that it's different. Chusam zmanai is Mekadosh the bread, Menachos l'mkaimai, right? Again, we're going back to that original discussion regarding the Torah being Mekadosh the bread. So the Kedusha of the bread arrives through the Torah, right? The Torah is Mekadosh the bread. So if the Shechita was Chus Shloi L'Shma, all agree. The Pasuk Shloi L'Shma does not work. Chus Azmani, all agree, does work. Question is, what about Chus L'mkaimai? Initially, Rabbi Lezer says, Chus L'mkaimai works. And then he was moided to Rabbi Shua that does not work. And in fact, Rabbi Shua says, look, I'll tell you why it doesn't work, because we compare it to Shalei L'Shmai, which doesn't work. Okay, that was the back and forth. So back to our discussion. We had suggested a linkage between our discussion and the previous discussion. And then, just as Rabbi Lezer conceded, over here, Rabbah concedes to Rabbah. Ikadami, according to the second version, no, he didn't agree. He didn't concede. Avagav, the hard Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shua, even though in the previous discussion, Rabbi Lezer conceded to Rabbi Shua that by Shchita v'Toida Chus L'mkaimai there's no Kedushas Halechem. Over here, Rabbah does not agree with Rabbah regarding our discussion of whether take it off the mizbeach by the chatas. Right? Why? Because over there was another element involved. Because if you recall, Rabbi Shua responded by saying that the we have a precedent, we have source material. Even you'll agree that the shchita shel lishma in the Torah prevents the lechem from being kaddish. And likewise, Chus L'mkaimai will connect and learn from Shaloi L'Shmai. But over here, by the Chatas, that equation doesn't apply. So again, what happened? He had a Chatas, he did the Shchita Chus L'mkaimai. It's on the Mizbeach. Do you take it off or not? Even if you would theoretically try to connect this case to a case where you shechted the chatas shel lishma, guess what? Guess what happens there? You mostly tear it. In the chatas, that was shechted shel lishma, if it's on the mizbeach, you leave it, they all agree. So there's no source material to equate to. And therefore, you can very much understand that Rabbah would stick to his position that the chatas, Chus L'mkaimai, stays on the mizbeach. Okay, so in conclusion, chatas sheshachta shel lishma it's on the mizbeach, leave it there. Chus Azman on the mizbeach, leave it there. There's a machlokes. The question is whether there was a concession or not. Shachta shel lishma. No, so the Mishnah speaks about a case where he did the shchita on the Torah, or the Mishnah provides a couple examples. Eila miluim, the shnei kisat teres on shvois, as examples of this halacha as well. Shchita shel lishma is not mekadosh the bread. Amar Papa, I have a question on the choice of examples that the Tana picked. Shavak Tana Didan, our Tana sort of abandoned, let go of a very common example, Ayel Nazar. The Shchiach, a very common carbon that a Nazar brings, an Ayel with breads. Why didn't he have that on his list instead of the Ayel of the Miluim, which happened way back in the Midbar, which is not really applicable today? V'nakat Ayel HaMiluim, and instead he chose to discuss Ayel HaMiluim. Why? The answer is Tana Didan, Ikim also Nakat. The Tana specifically referred to Ayla Miluim because there are three pshatim in this. Ikir Milsa, one pshat in Rashi. It's the first time. It was first time they brought karbanis, so it's a good starting point. Of course, Ayel Nazar will have the same halacha, but just as a reference point, he chose that one. Another pshat Rashi says because if you look at the list of three examples, the Ayla Miluim, Kivsei Atzeres, those two examples are examples of karbanis tzibur, public karbanis, which the Tana chose to refer to instead of private karbanis. The upstairs Rashi over here has a different pshat. He says that the Ikar Milsa means it's the first time they brought a bread in a carbon with this type of packaging, with bread accompaniment in the midbar. So that's why he referred to that as opposed to Ayel Nazar. Okay, continues the Mishnah. So we discussed the halacha of the bread that comes along with the various karbanis, whether it's the toida, miluim, Ayel Nazar, or right, which is sort of an add-on to the carbon. Here comes another example of a hakrava, which is an add-on to a carbon. That's an asachim, right? The wine that you bring with a carbon. So how does it get its kedusha, etc., etc.? Hanasachim shekotche b'kli. Nesachim had already been sanctified in kli sharis and prepared to accompany this specific carbon. And guess what? Turns out that the carbon failed. There was a mishap. Somebody bungled the carbon. Rim says zevach pas. What do you do with these nesachim? Im zer zevach acher. Answer is if you have another carbon nearby, so do a quick transfer and have it applied to that carbon. Yakriva imoy. If you have another carbon available, then we have no choice. You pasal belina, you have to let it stay overnight till it becomes pasal. Okay, Amaziri. Ein ha-nesachim miskatchen, aber shchita zevach. He meant to know that kedusha only arrives at the nesachim through the shchita of the carbon, which is very similar to the story of the breads with the taida that get their kedusha through the shchita of the carbon. So up until then, it's kaddish, but only monetarily kaddish. Right? Not as sensitive as material which was upgraded to a higher status of kedushas haguf, which is inherently kaddish, which makes it susceptible to all kinds of interferences like lina. All these things only apply to kedushas haguf. So again, Ziri states a fact. He says, look, you should know kedusha only arrives through shchitas hazevach. My time and why? Look at the pasuk. Amakra. Zevach. Zevach means the act of shchita. Zevach and nesachim. See, the shchita makes the nesachim kaddish. Tanan. If so, let's take a look again at our Mishnah. Nesachim shekotche b'kli. So you have the nesachim and the kli sharis. If it says zevach pasuk and something happened with the carbon, im yesh zevach acher. Okay, if you're lucky enough to have another carbon there, yikru imay, just transfer to the other carbon. Otherwise, you pasal belina. Let it stay overnight. It becomes pasal belina. Now lina process only adversely affects material which was inherently kaddish, kedushas haguf, which didn't happen in this case because the psul occurred before the carbon was ma'ala difsul b'shchita. So we're assuming the mishap occurred during the shchita, in which case the nesachim never got their kedusha. So what's the issue? Why lina? Loy difsul b'zrika. No. We're speaking that the shchita was a successful shchita. The nesachim were granted their kedusha. Something happened in the zrika. Okay, so that's in line with Ziri. The nesachim were kaddish because of the shchita. Now something happened, and you're stuck. You have to find another alternative. Hold it, says the Gemara. But why would the shchita on its own accomplish the kedusha? Come on, do you mean to say you're going like the opinion of Rabbi Damu, who says shnei dvarim hamatirin mal and zebul hazeh, when you have two permitters, such as in this case you have the shchita and the zrika, which are the 1-2 step process that processes the carbon. One of them is enough to be mala, to elevate, to affect the accompaniments, to be mekadosh to the nesachim, such as in this case where only the shchita was successful, not the zrika. I feel the Rabbi Shimon. No. We could be going even the Rabbi Shimon, who typically requires that in order to be mekadosh, in order to accomplish, you need both shchita and zrika done successfully. But in this case, you'll have it. Why? Even though the zrika itself wasn't really successful, my skin was speaking about a case going shekibol domer b'kois. What happened was he did the shchita properly, because that's one checked off. And then he collected the blood in anticipation of this zrika. He collected it in a kli, ready to go. Finished, and then it spilled out. But the point is that since it was prepared, it was already enabled for zrika. It is considered as though the zrika process has somewhat begun, and it is considered as though it experiences zrika with respect to the nesachim getting their kedusha. Rabbi Shimon is in line with his own father, who adopts this view that when something is about to happen, when something is prepared and enabled for the next step, to a certain extent it is considered as though it's already begun, and we have that accomplishment. Rabbi Shimon is so like kapasei boils like his father, the who says, when something is enabled for zrika, it's ready to go, to a certain extent it's considered as though it happened. And that explains why the nesachim became kaddish. Because they had the shchita, and they had the zrika to a certain extent, and therefore they're kaddish, and therefore, if this mishap occurs, right, the blood got spilled out, so the nesachim are still here, what do? Says the Mishnah, well, you have another alternative, send it over, otherwise, pasabelina. So again, Ziri tells us that the nesachim become kaddish strictly through the processing of the carbon, through the shchita, according to Rabbi, according to Rabbi Shimon, you need the zrika as well, but this qualifies. So once you have the kedusha of the nesachim, you have to treat them properly. So you can't just redeem them. You can't just, right? So if you have another carbon, send it over. Otherwise, inevitably, you leave it overnight till it becomes possible. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah review again. There's another carbon available, attached to nesachim there. Asked the Gemara, how could you make a transfer from one carbon to the other? It was designated for, it was labeled for this carbon. Didn't Rav Chizda tell us elsewhere, shemen, regarding the oil of a mincha, which is meant to be mixed into a mincha, shefrisha l'shum mincha was designated for this particular mincha, and something happened, you can't passul l'shum mincha acharis, you can't just transfer it to a different mincha. Amar Rav Yanai. You're right. In general, you're right. It's committed to this one. You can't just. But by the Nesachim, there was a special system, a special arrangement. Leiv Bezdin Masnalim, the Bezdin has their mind on it. They sort of precondition it. Im, and the Rashi on bottom says we're talking about a public carbon here. So the Bezdin has a say in the matter. Im hutzruchu, if they're needed, if the carbon is successful, fine, hutzruchu, so then great. But otherwise, if something happened to the carbon and they're sitting here waiting, you'll just transfer a different carbon. Yochisham says the more, if you do this arrangement by the wine, to allow transfer, do the same with the oil. Why does Rav Chizda say that you can't transfer oil from one mincha to the next? Says the Gemara, oil is different. Oil is an inherent part and parcel of the mincha. It's mixed into the mincha. It's meant for that. So it's too committed. It's too bound, too tied to this mincha. You can't transfer it, even through a leiv bezdin masna leim. Ask the Gemara. Fine, back to the Nesachim. They made a t'nai, they conditioned, fine. But why? Only if there's another carbon nearby. Let them make a very simple, straightforward system. If you don't need it, goes back home, it becomes chulin. Okay, it loses its kedusha. And then you can do whatever you want. But listen, they should make a t'nai condition, alain on the Nesachim, that if chulin should be considered chulin if it's not needed. The answer is you're right. Technically they could, but we want to keep things above board. We don't want people to misconstrue, misunderstand. Gzera is a concern. People will see this happening. They'll say, they won't realize that it's through the system of the Bezdin. And they see, wine that was in a klisharis is suddenly being drunk on Purim. Moitzin miklisharis l'chol, you can take something that was in a klisharis and take it home. So we don't want to create that effect. So at most we say just transfer it to a different carbon. Says the Gemara, why is that any better? Hashtanami now as well. Gzera, there's a concern that the unlearned person will say, you can just transfer stuff around. You can freely transfer nesachim from this carbon to the other carbon. Says the Gemara, no, we keep it quiet and discreet. Hatani Matasya ben Yehuda, he taught us that this transfer is only allowed, kigoin, for instance, there was a carbon already slaughtered here, sitting here, so it's a quiet, discreet, smooth transfer without, creating a scene. So that's the more, if that's the requirement, but you tell me if there's no carbon right there, so what's the status of this unneeded nesachim, nifsa balina? So again, you have to just let it become pasul, for lack of better options. If that's the case, Aditani is safe. Let's take a look again at our Mishnah. Mishnah says like this. We have two options. You don't need these nesachim. There's another carbon there, transferred. Otherwise, lina, psulina. Aditani is safe. So later on the Mishnah looks for a distinction, looks to present a case where we're out of options. It says, if you have no other carbon to transfer to, you possible lina, it becomes possible lina. Why go there? Why can't the Mishnah simply make a distinction within this case? It works if you have a carbon ready to go. It doesn't work if you have no carbon ready to go. If what we're saying is so that you can only transfer to a carbon that's already shechted there, the Mishnah should simply make a distinction within this very circumstance. When do we allow a transfer? When it's quiet, discreet and smooth. There was already a carbon sitting there. There's no carbon already shechted. Then you can't do it. So we have a simple distinction within this circumstance. Why do you have to go to the lina, to a case where there's no carbon at all? It's exactly what the Mishnah is saying. When do we allow a transfer? There's no carbon that was already shechted by Zishah at that time. But otherwise, then you're out of options. It's as though Nasa commission of Subalina. It's as though it became possible Lina, Upsulina, it's possible. Okay, so at the end of the day, it works like this. The Shchita and or the Zrika, and according to the Zrika of the carbon is Makadish and Nesachim, brings up the Kedushas HaGuf. And if the carbon was bungled, what do you do with the Nesachim? There's another carbon that was already Zavuach right there, you just transfer it over. And this is based on the Leiv Bezdin Masna Leim, which allows for extra material to be transferred. but otherwise not. Ask the Gemara. Now, we earlier we established that our Mishnah will be going even like Rabbi Eliezer B'Shimon, right? We'll work out even according to him. Now, as we just concluded, the halacha of the Mishnah is tied to the halacha of Lev Bezdin Masna Leim. Right? Well, actually, Reb Shimon is not of the opinion that you can say Lev Bezdin Masna Leim. At least that's what it appears. Umi Yislei Reb Shimon Lev Bezdin Masna Leim. Does Reb Shimon concur with this idea of Lev Bezdin? We find otherwise. This is another example of unneeded material. You have the end of the year, you have some lambs left over in the lamb chamber, which was extra, wasn't needed for the Talmud. What do you do with it? Reb Shimon does not allow us to redeem it as is. Because a carbon has kedushas aguf, you can't just redeem it unless it gets a blemish and it gets downgraded to just a level of monetary kedusha. But otherwise, you can't just say, I'm going to redeem it. However, according to the Chachamim, yes, you could. Nifta and Tamim, you could be paid. You can redeem those extra animals even if they're unblemished. And the reason is because the Bezdin was masna, they condition. It's an ongoing system which says if you don't need it, if it's extra at the end of the year. By the way, they couldn't just use it for next year. Rashi explains because you're meant to employ new funds, from the new collection of the Machzah Shekel for the new material. So the old material cannot be used for the new year. And therefore, Lev Bezdin Masna Leim allows it. It says, look, whatever is not going to be needed this year becomes chulin, was never part of the Kedusha. But apparently Reb Shimon doesn't hold to that concept of Lev Bezdin. Says the Gemara, theoretically he does. He just doesn't apply it over there. Why? It's different than the case of it in the Nesachim over here where we're stuck. Right? If there's no Lev Bezdin, you're stuck. It's going to become... Over there it's different. Animals. Shani Yosma, the animals, this loop, to contemplate is a way to fix it up. You can accommodate. You can solve the issue by re'iyah. Let it pasture, let it roam around until it gets a blemish. And then you can be paid without any issues. So, if we have a feasible option, we prefer not applying this unusual, solution of Lev Bezdin. We prefer keeping away from it to keep things, consistent and but in the case where you're stuck, like the Nesachim, even he would agree, Lev Bezdin allows for an easy transfer. Continues the Mishnah. So we know that a toida has bread. What about if it's not the original carbon toida? It's a vlad toida, offspring of a carbon toida, which has kedusha as well. It's meant to be brought as a toida, but what about bread? Does it need another batch of bread? Utmarosa, let's say it's a tmur, an exchange. So you took the original toida, you said, well, this new animal here should be an exchange, right? So the kedusha sort of should extend to that. You're not meant to do it, but if you do it, the second animal has kedusha of toida. What happened to bread there? Another example, Hifresh toida, he was mafresh, he's designated as carbon toida, and got lost. And he went and he got a replacement, and now he found the first one. You have two standing here. Hifresh toida Bavli, mafresh toida got lost. And then he was mafresh another one in its place, and then he found the first one. So in all these cases, eino tuna lechem, the second one, the copy, the replacement, does not eat bread. Shenema, the pasuk says, and we learn how toida tuna lechem, only the original one eats lechem, but not the copies. V'lo yivlada, v'lo chilufa, not the yivlad, the offspring, or the exchange, v'lo tmurasa, not the backup one, not the replacement, not the tmura, the exchange, tuna lech. Tana Rabban. Here comes a brayso, which will explain all these halachas based on the pasuk. Ma'u eimer toida yakriv. The pasuk begins like this: Im al toida yakrivenu. Yakrivenu is a fully extra word because we know he's being makriv the toida. V'yikriv al zebach toida. So the word yakrivenu is extra, right? So once it says v'hikriv, why yakrivenu? And then we have zebach ha-toida. So we're going to analyze all these words in light of the halachas in the Mishnah. Once it says toida yakriv, why does it say yakrivenu? It teaches as follows: Okay, how do we know that a fellow who was mafresh a toida and it got lost, and then he was mafresh another one in its stead. He discovered the first one. Now he has two standing before him. Which one is he going to be makriv? Believe it or not, he can choose whichever one he wants. He could even be makriv the second one if he likes the second one better. It's a nicer one. How do we know that he can do that? The owner has a choice, has the power to choose which one will become the original one with the bread. So the word yakrivenu is now sort of dissected into two: yakriv and the new. Yakriv says it's up to you to choose whichever one you want. Now, Yochel Shetei Shnia Tuna Lechem. Perhaps he has to add bread to the second one as well. Talmud Yakriven new, only this one. Echad L'Shnaim, only the original one, not the copy, not the replacement. Ach Asher B'Kasav Amiyut. Now, once we have a ribon amiyut, on the one hand we say the other one is also considered somewhat a toida. But then we say, no, but it's not like the original. What about other circumstances, other types of additional toidas, copies? A child, a vlad, a tmura. How do we know that they are also offered as a korban toid, la krova? Im al toida. Al means add-on. Even the additional versions are considered a toida. What about bread on those additional versions? Yochel yutunas lechem. What about bread? Is that required for the vlad, for the tmura? So we already know that it doesn't apply to the replacement one. But what about the other types of variation? The extra hay says only that one. Only the original one is lechem, but not the other ones. Not the vlad, all those do not require tunin lechem. Okay, all the best to you and atzlacha.